Hello viewers, welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to take a look at an interesting tool called Kubedoom. Okay, so when I was a child, I remember playing this game, Doom. I don't know how many of you remember playing this Doom game. I was not a very good gamer back then. Even now, I'm not a good gamer, but it sounds like an interesting idea to learn Kubernetes as well as to play your interested games. Okay, so there we go. So we have Doom here. And we have our Kubernetes cluster. The idea here is to test the resiliency of your application by killing pods randomly, by shooting pods. So you are testing your application's resiliency as well as having some fun playing the games. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to move that to its own workspace so that we get a bigger terminal. And let me show you my Kubernetes cluster, kubectl get node. So I've got a 3-node cluster with one control plane. This is running using Rancher's K3D, Kubernetes in Docker containers. I've done a video about K3D, couple of videos actually about K3D in the past. Okay, so if any of you are interested in K3Ds, just search in my channel for Rancher K3D. You will get some, I think 2 or 3 videos around on K3D topic. Okay, so that's about K3D. So we have a working cluster. I haven't got anything else. If I do kubectl get all in the default namespace, that's the Kubernetes service. That's it. I don't have anything else. If I do kubectl get pods -a, -a for all namespaces, you can see basically it's a very lightweight Kubernetes cluster. You can't expect a fully blown Kubernetes cluster with Rancher's K3D, but it does its purpose. So we've got core DNS, we've got local path provisioner, metric server, and traffic. Okay, so that's not the point here. So we have a working Kubernetes cluster. We're gonna create a simple Nginx deployment and play the Doom game. Okay, for this, what you need is, as I said, you need a working Kubernetes cluster. It can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in your local machine. So my Kubernetes cluster is running on my laptop here, but it doesn't have to be on your local laptop. You just need the ability to be able to connect to a Kubernetes cluster with kubeconfig file. Okay, so let's take a look at what Kubedoom is and how we go about running them. Okay, so if I just search for Kubedoom, this one, Storax Kubedoom, the GitHub link here, so that's the one. And basically what we will be doing is running a Docker container locally on our machine, and it's going to mount, we are going to bind mount our .kube directory to /root.kube, the root accounts .kube directory inside the container. So the container will have access to the Kubernetes config file, like what you have access in your host machine. The container will have the access because we are bind mounting the .kube directory. All right, so like I said, the Kubernetes cluster can be anywhere. In your .kube directory, you have the kubeconfig file. If you can connect to any Kubernetes cluster from your machine using the kubeconfig file, so does the container. So the container will have access, whatever access you have in your kubeconfig file. If you have cluster admin, if you have admin access or anything, make sure you just use the right Kubernetes cluster. You don't want to be running a Kubedoom against a production Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so double check your kubeconfig file. So that's what the Docker container will be using, the Kubedoom image will be using. Okay, and apart from having a Kubernetes cluster and Docker installed on your machine, because we're going to be using Docker to bring up the container, you also need a VNC viewer. So when you run this Docker container, it's going to spin up an application. And then the way to connect to the graphical interface of the application is through the VNC client, VNC viewer. Okay, so in my case, I have few. So VNC viewer. If I do which VNC viewer, I have user bin VNC viewer. So that comes from the Tiger VNC client. So I installed Tiger VNC viewer, not the server, but just the viewer client. So I can use the VNC to connect to a remote machine. In our case, this the Docker container, the Kubedoom Docker container. I also have, so when you install Tiger VNC viewer, you get this VNC viewer command line, and the option to connect to, the way you connect to a remote desktop is through this command, VNC viewer, the server name where your application is actually running, and the port where it's exposing. Okay, usually it starts with 5901 or 5900 to 59, whatever higher ports are. So that's the command line way of connecting to a remote VNC session. Okay, and when you install Tiger VNC server, you also get Tiger VNC viewer, the graphical thing, and again you specify the server name, the port number you want to connect to, and you will get connected to it. And apart from that, I also have a remote viewer. Yeah, that's the remote viewer. It works nicely. The interface blends with the GNOME theme that I've got, the GTK theme that I've got. So I prefer to use the remote viewer. So what is remote viewer? If I do which remote viewer, it's user bin remote viewer. And if I do apt file search remote viewer, I'm just trying to find which package I installed that provided this utility. And you can see virt viewer. So on my system I have kvm, libvirt, and all sort of virtualization softwares packages installed on my machine. So it's the virt viewer package that provided the remote viewer. So whatever VNC client you want to use, make use of it. I prefer using virt viewer and the remote viewer from the virt viewer package. Okay, right. So what next? Let's go back to the documentation. So what we are going to do is run this Docker container. We are connecting to the host network, and then we are mounting the volume, the directory, .kube directory inside the container under /root.kube --rm to remove the container when we exit out of the container or when we stop the container. -it for interactive, we give it a name, and then that's the image name, and we are using the latest version of the image. Okay, so optionally, if you want, you can restrict it to a particular namespace. What it's going to do is, when you run this Docker container, it's going to show all the pods in your cluster as little monsters in the Kubedoom game. Okay, so where is it? So all your pods will appear as these pink monsters in your game. And when I first ran the Docker container, because I had a working cluster that had lots of deployments and daemon sets, so there were lots and lots of pods. I was overwhelmed with the number of monsters, because basically the number of pods equal to number of monsters. So they killed me within like a couple of seconds. So I wasn't, as I said earlier, I'm not a good gamer, especially when it comes to shooting, first-person shooting game and things like that. So what I would say is, if you're starting, just go with the default namespace. To start with, in our default namespace, we didn't have any deployments. Okay, so kubectl get all in the default namespace. There's nothing. Okay, so I'm gonna create kubectl create deploy nginx kubectl get all. Okay, so container is getting created. So we have an nginx deployment to play with, which has one replica. Okay, so if I restrict this Kubedoom container to the default namespace, I only have one monster to tackle with. Okay, there's also some cheat that you can do with the Doom, which we will come to in a minute, but first let's try and run this Docker thing. So it's mapping port 5901 inside the container to 5900 on your local machine. So I don't know why they choose 5900, but if you look at down here, start the VNC viewer and connect to localhost 5901, but it won't be 5901 if you use this option. It will be 5900. Let me show you. I don't know whether they might need to update the documentation here. Definitely when you try and connect to 5901, there won't be anything listening on 5901. It's 5900. So that's the port that's mapped to your host. So 5901 here. So that's the port in the container, and that's the port in your host system. I don't know why the document says that you need to connect to port 5901. Anyways, let me show you how you can connect to it and what happens when you connect to 5901. Okay, so let's copy this command, and I'm going to paste it here. Docker run. Okay, so everything is fine. Let's run it, and I'm also going to open up another pane so that I can run kubectl get pods. Okay, so we have that one pod, one replica from the nginx deployment, and we have this Kubedoom Docker container running. So now we should be able to connect to that container using VNC viewer. So I'm going to use, as I said, remote viewer, and as you can see, I've already made a connection. It's showing up in my recent connections list. So it's basically the protocol and the server. In my case, it's a Docker container running on my machine, so I can use localhost. And the port is 5900. But as per the documentation, if you try 5901, Let me actually show you something. Netstat LTP, you can see there is this port X11 BNC listening on 5900 and there is nothing on 5901. Okay, let me try and connect to 5901 and see what happens. Nothing, unable to connect to the graphics server because there is no process listening on port 5901. So I wasn't sure why the documentation says you got to connect to 5901 unless there is a typo here. If they wanted to port map 5901 to 5901, so instead of 1 there's a typo 0, in which case you can use VNC viewer from the command line, or you can use localhost colon 5901. But if this command is right, you're mapping the host port 5900 to the container port 5901. So you should be able to connect to localhost colon 5900. Okay, let's connect to it. And it's asking for a password which should be in the documentation, and which is this one, ID behold. Okay, let's try that. ID behold. Okay, so we are inside the game. I accidentally wasted 6 of my bullets, I think. Okay, bear with me. I'm not a good gamer. Let's see. Okay, so control is for firing, and then you use the arrow keys for navigation. And then these bastards here are not the actual bot. They start to shoot you. Come on. Okay, that's gone. I think there's somebody behind me shooting me. Let's try. I'm sure I won't last long in this one. I might be using the cheat to get to the pods quicker. Okay, so let's try. I don't know where to go. I think maybe, oh, come on. Okay, that's good. I'm gonna climb up the stairs and see. By the way, if you want to pause the game, press escape and then escape again to get back into the game. I think if I go here, there should be somewhere that I can go. No, not this place. Nope, not this one. I actually don't know where I'm actually going. Okay. Alright, I think I actually played this game before. It was there was a way that I can actually go, but I think I forgot where I'm actually going. I think there must be a door to open. Okay, let's see. Nope, it's not here. Where's the door? Where's the door? Is this the door? Nope, not that one. Okay, let me tell you. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to play this game because I'm definitely not good at playing these sort of games. So I'm going to escape and I'm going to quit the game. Press Y to quit. Okay, let's close this. Stop the Docker container. Let me show you a cheat sheet. Right, you should now see Doom. Now, if you want to get the job done quickly, enter the cheat IDSPIS pop D and walk through the wall on your right. You should be greeted by your pods as little pink monsters. Press Ctrl to fire. If the pistol is not your thing, cheat with ID KFA and press 5 times for a nice surprise. Okay, let's go back to the game. I forgot almost one thing. I need to pause somewhere here, anywhere, the namespace -e, namespace equals default. Okay, so when I use the cheat sheet and go through the wall, I just say one monster because I'm running just one replica of the Nginx container. If I don't specify namespace equal to default, there'll be a lot of surprise. There'll be a lot of monsters waiting for me, which I don't like. Okay, so let the containers come up, and here let us just watch the pod. Okay, remote viewer, connect to the recent connection. The password is id behold. Okay, so in here I'm going to enter the cheat sheet. What's the cheat sheet again? What's the cheat? ID SP. Okay, I'll come to that in a minute, but before that I'm going to apply this cheat, ID KFA, and press 5. ID KFA and press 5. Cool. So now I've got a bigger gun. Let me fire it once to see how it looks like. Control to fire. Okay, I think it looks okay. So now, before applying the other cheat, let me show you that you can't actually go through this wall without that cheat. Okay, so the monsters are actually on the other side of this wall. So on a normal workflow, when you play this game, you have to shoot all those monsters, all those people out there, and then there will be a way. You need to open up a door, and then you have to come around this building to get to the monsters on the other side of this wall. But if we use the cheat, what's the cheat again? IDSP pop D. Okay, IDSP pop D, and press 5. No, yeah. Okay, yep. I've gone through the wall because I entered the cheat. There's the monster. There's the monster. Okay, I've killed, and on the left you can see it terminated and the new container is getting created. Where is this new monster? There we go. Okay, he's gone, and on the left you can see it's terminating and a new container will start because it's a deployment. So as you keep killing the pod, or as we are playing the game, as you keep killing the monster, you will see new pods getting created. So that's the idea of this game. I'm gonna stay here right in this place, and I'm gonna keep firing. That's it. It's a safer place for me. So as you can see here, I'm just dealing with one monster, just one pod. If I didn't include the -e namespace equal to default option, there will be loads of monsters here, and they will get me in a matter of seconds. Okay, come on. Or do you want me to come closer to you? Okay, no. Okay, that's gone, and a new container is getting created. Okay, lost monster. Okay, go away. Let me close this game. It's not very interesting, but again, I'm gonna show you something else, right? So if I close this, kubectl delete deploy nginx, and let's say instead of a deployment, I'm just going to run a pod. Okay, kubectl run nginx. So that's just a pod, it's not a deployment. If I do kubectl get all, you don't see any deployment or daemons or anything. It has just spun up a pod, which means there is nothing, there's no controller or anything to watch the pod. So if I kill the pod now, the pod is gone. That's it. Alright, let's run the game again in the default namespace, and then go to our remote viewer, connect, password is id behold, and the cheat to go through the wall on your right is IDSPISPOPD, and now I should be able to go there. And this time I'm not going to apply the other cheat, I'm just going to use this shotgun and see if it actually works. Yeah, go. It takes a little bit of time to kill the monster with this gun. Go away, go away. There goes, he's gone. Okay, on the left here, if I do kubectl get pods, there's no resource found. That's gone. That's because it's a pod, not a deployment. So just to show you how it's going to look, if you run it without the default namespace, you will see a whole lot of pods. Okay, let's run that, and here if I do kubectl get pods -a, you'll see 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 pods. Let's see how good I am in killing all those pods. Remote viewer, localhost 5900, password is id behold, and this time I'm going to apply both the cheat, one for the weapon id kfa press 5. Okay, we've got a bigger gun, and also id sp ispopd. Right, now I can go through the pod, and if I go through this wall, there will be 9 monsters waiting to take my life. Let's see how many I'm gonna kill. Right, 9 monsters. I'm not sure whether they are shooting at me or not, but that's the fun here. Okay, not bad, not bad, not bad. I think they're not shooting at me. My health is going down. Yeah, I'm down. Yeah, it took a good 10-20 seconds for those 9 pods to kill me, 9 monsters to kill me. But anyway, that was a fun. Okay, hope you enjoyed this video. That's all I wanted to show you in this video. And there's one other thing before I wrap up. That is, if you want to use Kubedoom to kill namespaces instead of pod, you can use killing namespaces. You just need to pass minus mode namespaces. Let's say you've got like hundreds of namespaces, or let's say you've got like 5 or 10 namespaces. Instead of dealing with pods, you can test the resiliency of your Kubernetes cluster itself by deleting the entire namespace and see how your application behaves. I guess when you delete the namespace, that's it, your application is gone. There is no resiliency. This is just for game purpose, I guess. Okay, that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed watching me play the Doom game. I certainly won't be doing this so often. It's just for recording this video and show you guys how to use this game. That's it. Okay, I will see you all guys in another video. Until then, keep learning and keep on learning. Bye bye.